Good afternoon. My name is Paul Healey, and I am the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Hingham. I'd like to thank HCAM for giving us this opportunity to speak to the residents about issues of interest. Present with me today and joining me in this conversation is Ted Alexiades. He's our town administrator, served in that position for a number of years now. And I think that when you're through listening to what we have to say today, I'm hoping that you'll feel that you're a little bit more informed than you started out. The first matter of business that we're going to talk about is the Freedom Award. And Ted, I know you're the recipient of the Patriot Award. And I happen to have the privilege and pleasure of seeing you receive that. And I'm very excited about the upcoming event with respect to the Freedom Award itself. But as I've been on the board a relatively short time, I think this effort started many years ago. And I'd like you to take us back, if you could, just to give the public a sense of what this means and its significance to the town in general.
Thank you very much for having me here, Paul. The Freedom Award, which you just mentioned, is an award that Keith German, our veterans officer, nominated the town for, his employer. And we received the award as one of 3,000 employers nationally from the Department of Defense for our efforts in working with ESGR and promoting veteran issues in relation to employment during their entire military career. And I think what's important about this is a change in the focus of the military in how they deal with transition in and out of military life for our country. And ESGR, which represents, ESGR stands for Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. And there's a chapter within every state of the country. The state of Massachusetts ESGR this year recognized the town of Hingham with the Pro Patriot Award, which is their version of the Freedom Award, and recognizes our commitment within the state, and then of course the federal government through the DOD does it nationally. And what we're trying to do with this mission here is allow military personnel to move in and out of active duty and not be put at a financial loss so that the burden of their service is put further upon them, and that we all share the burden of their service. For me, as an American, it's very important because they're the ones protecting us. And I can't think of anything more noble than asking someone to put their life at risk for you. And so that's what our military does for us every day. And we hear the phrases, freedom isn't free, and the effort. We know that, but seeing Keith, for example, this year leave us for a year, and know that I couldn't walk down to the office to see him. He was gone, and maybe not coming back. And thankfully, of course, he has come back, and we're so happy for that. But that process of moving in and out is the sixth deployment. His earlier deployments were at great cost to him financially, his family. He had to leave jobs, and when he came back from his deployment, those jobs weren't there for him, and he had to go look for a new job. And if you come back in a bad economy,
sure,
you may be out of work for a while.
Sure.
And so that's a tremendous burden to place on our military, and ESGR is really at the front lines of saying, hey, that's not the right way to do this. I believe DOD has that same mission. I listened to U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz speak a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago with Keith, about this issue and how they want to create a situation where people can move in and out of military life, serve their country, not be put at a financial loss, and move back into society. So we not only hold their jobs open for them, but the advancement that they would get had they been here is still given to them when they get back. So they don't lose place with the people that have stayed behind. And I think that's very important for us. We're going to continue on with a project that I'm going to roll out for the selectmen in the next few weeks, where we're actually going to be utilizing employees within each of the departments, police, fire, and DPW, We have Officer Mark Quat, who also nominated Mike Perino, retired Chief Mike Perino, for the Patriot Award. We're one of the few organizations that have two. Myself as a recipient from Keith, nominating me for the Patriot Award, and Officer Mark Quat nominated Mike Perino for the Patriot Award. So Officer Mark Quat and other personnel are going to begin a recruitment process where we're actually going to go out to military bases where we can meet with military personnel and talk to them about what it would be like to come work for the town of Hingham when their service is done. And perhaps they have skills that they want to bring over immediately, or perhaps they're earlier in their service and they want to adapt their service to have skills throughout their military training that are transferable to the jobs that we have here. We have people who work for us now in senior positions that have done that type of work in the military, EMTs, firefighters, and other activities. If you looked, I know you and I were talking about this the other day, the work Keith did in his last deployment, laying runways and doing a variety of things like that.
Construction battalion.
It's a lot of the stuff we do here in Public Works. So I will put my hat on as the employer and say, if the federal government is going to train our young men and women, I'd like to take advantage of that as an employer and put them to good work.
You know, it's interesting you say that because, you know, in my earliest service to the town, I was a policeman, and I worked for a chief who was a Marine reservist. He was a helicopter crew chief, a sergeant major. And there were a number of fellow officers on the department that had a reserve commitment. And I got to see that on a regular basis, the sacrifice that they were making, you know, both serving their town as police officers, but also serving their country and giving up their vacation time and time away from their families to serve the country. Recently, I had the opportunity and pleasure to go into the Coast Guard station in Boston with John Asher, who's the chair of the Veterans Council, the Veteran Service Officer presently serving Jamie Litchfield, and Scott McMillan, who plays a prominent role in the veteran services there. And we got to see and hear firsthand the importance and the value that the reservist brings to the mission of the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard literally guards the coast, but their duties are vast and their responsibilities are great. And the skill sets that I saw being put to work, I think just showed how important and valuable having a reservist who can transfer those skills into the employment sector, whether it be private sector or the government itself in terms of a municipality. You know, I'd like to think that the Freedom Award it's not an award that's given to exclusively a municipal employer, but as I may have said at some point, that there are a lot of employers in the town. A lot of people employ people, and this is something that we're trying to encourage generally for those employees who, you know, need that little extra assistance to facilitate their service to the country. I mean, the concept of the citizen soldier is a very real and important dynamic in today's service.
Correct, and that's, I think, that really speaks, Paul, to why the mission changed. The mission for the Veterans Officer in Massachusetts changed dramatically within the last 10 years. It's changing to from one where we were taking care of veterans that had returned, them and their spouses. And that's pretty much been the Veterans Office for the better part of the last 20 to 30 years. What's changed in the last 5 to 10 years is that we're now having new returning veterans coming and, you know, back from the Middle East, and they have issues that we have to deal with. Some of them pretty serious. In addition to that, we now have locked into this idea that we will have better experience with the veteran if we help them both on the deployment side and on the returning side. This is really, I think, Keith German's brainchild, as he struggled with some of his deployments, putting his arms around everything he had to do beforehand. Keith has developed a package of pre-deployment activity that covers not just what the military gives you, but what you need to think about for your civilian side of life and how to interact with your community. In addition, making sure you sign up for the appropriate things if your community offers them, like we do, deferred property taxes and other issues. So that's the shift from taking care of people who served many, many years ago, are elderly and need financial assistance predominantly, or medical assistance, to one where we're trying to job train, get back to work, help with the deployment, and be ready for them when they return. There's a big difference and a change. I think a change for the better.
I also like the initiative of looking for future employees through the military skill set that is developed through Uncle Sam. I think that's a very positive thing to do.
As I've said to you many times, we're the employer. We're a large employer in Hingham. My job is to help you find quality employees. If the federal government is going to train them, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't at least be looking.
Sure.
I don't want to say I have a veteran's preference when I employ, because I have a preference of the best quality employee for the town of Hingham. I will tell you, though, that it frequently winds up being a veteran, because the statistics don't lie. That's a commitment. To serve in the military requires a discipline and a commitment that translates extremely well into the private sector, and our experience is very positive with those attributes.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to the town celebrating the receipt of the Freedom Award. I think that's a great accomplishment. My compliments to you and to the Veterans Service Office, and to those veterans that contributed their time and energy into assisting those actively serving the country, whether it be in active duty or through the reserves. I think that's a real tribute.
The Veterans Office in the town of Hingham operates at a level that I've seen nowhere else. It is at just a superlative level of excellence, to use too many superlatives. But it's not just Keith. Keith helped us select Jamie Litchfield, who served admirably for him during Keith's deployment, continues to serve until Keith returns to work. Lisa Potts in the office really has taken ownership of the office.
I agree.
And takes great care of everybody who walks in. Seamlessly, we've been able to manage all the client loads this past year while he's been deployed, but also begin some new initiatives they've done. The Flags for Soldiers initiative is one. But I will tell you that when we look at the Freedom Award and these other things, we look at that whole office. Lisa, Jamie, Keith. You can't go in that office in Town Hall without running into Tom Burbank or Scott McMillan. They're always there. Dave Sargent. Those guys are always in that office. They're always working. They're always volunteering. And that's why. If you go over to GR Hall, you see Art Smith over
Sure.
there, Ernie Sophis. A lot of these people spend a lot of time and energy making this place, the veterans' places in town, look beautiful. And they get credit for that, and they're all part of this award.
And my compliments to them as well.
Thank you.
Couldn't be done without a team effort, for
Yes.
sure. Yes. Absolutely. Let's switch gears if we could. The winter was a rough one here. We had what I have repeatedly referred to as an epic winter. I've lived in town 50 years, and I just have no memory of snow that deep and that prolonged. A lot of people missed time from work. Businesses took a hit. And the roadways did as well. So I thought it would help if the public understood, the process that we have in place, that we've used historically to repair, update, upgrade our roadways, and how that's been impacted by this year's weather. And it's my understanding that we're going to have a presentation shortly by the DPW on that very issue, but perhaps just to give a little advance notice to those that have expressed some interest, because there have been people inquiring about the condition of certain roadways in town. And we want to remain responsive and at the same time responsible for dealing with the roadways that have been prioritized through the analysis of the DPW.
Sure. Well, you're certainly correct. This winter was a horrendous one. The one point that sticks to me with the winter was, it's my responsibility to, along with the school superintendent, figure out what we're going to recommend to you to shut down the town for the day. And I asked a few of my colleagues in the industry if they can recall, we actually had 2 weeks where we had 3-day work weeks because of snow. That's really unprecedented to have something like that. You have one snow day, but to have back-to-back snow days like that on a repeated period of time, it was, I think Dustin said that it was a very incredibly demanding winter.
Epic.
We began the process in Hingham of adapting to the road building process that we use now. Roger Fernandez will be coming in on the 13th of August to update the presentation
or around that time
with you. The town, we have to take you back about 7-8 years now. 2008, 2009, the town felt that the roads were just not up to par and had suffered for about 4 or 5 years of underfunding. And they had. The state funding had fallen off, and the town had not increased funding to compensate for that. And there had been an overall degradation of the road quality within the community. I believe it was Selectman Rebuffo that had asked Roger Fernandez at the time to develop this plan with Harry Sylvester. And the two gentlemen created a plan where they surveyed the entire community of roads, and they graded every single road within the community. And then they began a systematic process to repave all of those roads. Understanding that roads that were in the worst condition, poor, would not necessarily be the first ones done. And that was a difficult concept for people to understand, which is, if I have an excellent, a good, a fair, and a poor quality, why would I work on my fair ones when I have poor quality roads out there? And the reason for that is that the paving costs quadruple when a road goes from fair to poor, because the project goes from a coating to a complete grading, grinding down to the base, and essentially building a new road back up. And
partial depth reconstruction.
Yes, correct. The technical term would be, a partial or a full depth reconstruction. And those costs can run 4 to 5 times the cost of repaving. So what we want to do is try to keep our fair roads repaved so they can move back into the excellent condition and stay that 10 to 15 years before it degrades the last 5 years into the poor quality. And so if you only have a finite amount of money and you keep chasing all of your poor quality roads, you're going to start to see a lot of your fares slip into that poor quality, and then you can never get out of the cycle. And that was an issue that Roger was able to point out to the town, get the town to understand early on in the process. Obviously, we can't just let our poor roads degrade even further, so we have to try to get to them too. But we try to equalize our funding and try to keep the quality of those roads from degrading any further, and essentially, pun intended, it becomes a snowball that you can't get out of the way of. We've had great success in the last 7 years in improving the quality of the roads across the whole community. That doesn't mean to say that there aren't roads that are in very tough shape, and people have called and are concerned about them, and that's very, very appropriate. But originally we start with a judgment of what grading they are, and then we begin to overlay how we're going to apply our funding and other people's fundings, in this case the state. But another area that we've been able to get a lot of funding from, I call it the innovation funding, and that's the DPW sitting down with all of the utilities that run in the streets. So you have your water and you have your sewer, but you also have your gas and your phone. And so predominantly gas is our largest issue. the gas company has the right, because of the nature of gas, and of course the water company too, and the sewer. If there's an emergency, they get to rip that road up immediately and go in and fix it. We don't want them to do that, if possible, if we just repaved a new road, because that immediately splits the surface and lowers
Sure.
the quality of it for the long term. We actually want our 20-year roads to get 20 years, because we need to save that money to be able to get to some other roads.
And is that what led to the policy adopted by previous Board of Selectmen to have a moratorium on the roadway openings?
That's exactly. We can show significantly that there is virtually no way to cut a road and patch it and maintain the same life over the life of the road that you would have had you not cut it. We can show roads after roads where
Sure.
it's just impossible to make that patch. But
I've seen that in other communities, actually, where the town will put a new finish course on its roadway, and then within a month's time, it's opening it up to do these gas and water
Correct.
fixes. And to me, it's, with a little bit of planning, you could extend the life of the roadway.
Well, it took a little bit of work and a lot of meetings, but we were able to match our 5-year schedule for road paving to the utilities' 5-year schedule for road paving. And by doing that, we said to the utilities, it's a win-win. You're not in the paving business, we are. Each of your road jobs, when the gas company replaces a main, they include in that a cost to fill the trench back in and patch. We've asked them to give us those funds, and we'll do the work for them. And so they can now they can move quicker because they don't have to do it, and we do it as part of a road construction project.
And is that what's happening down at World's End right now, on
Correct.
the roadways down there?
Correct.
And Crow Point is coming up, I understand.
When roads don't get done that look like they should be done, invariably when I look into it, it's because the gas company or the sewer, water, or another entity that has a utility has said, we're gonna do that road next year, or sometimes they accelerate a road early. It might be one of those fair quality roads that we hadn't planned on doing, but they're gonna go in early because they've got a leaky gas main and they need to replace that. So for us, we switch our dollars towards that because it's to our benefit to lock that road down into a 20-year asset. And that creates a little bit of a angst with people when they see a road being done that's not at the standard that theirs is. And people are smart, they can see.
Sure.
I took a drive, I drive regularly through all the roads, but last week specifically I went through the Whitcomb and Hollands Lane area, looked at some areas there that need to be worked on. Went to Crow Point, drove through those areas. Probably, one of the worst areas of town. I don't want to get into a judging of all the areas. Certainly don't want to pit areas against each other because we're going to try to get to everybody.
Right.
And there's some stresses. One of the things people ask us about regularly is, can you just put a little bit of skim coat down? A lot of towns do that. We've tried not to. The reason we tried not to is it's really throwing good money after bad. It's not going to last more than a year to 2 years. The road's going to open up back again. People are going to get dissatisfied that we were here. They would have assumed the solution lasts longer, but it's not. And then we wind up getting people angry at us that we're not fixing the problem permanently. And of course, we're using our resources that could go to actually fixing an entire road. So we'll do as we can, patch holes and skims here, but we like to try to save most of our money for the road work. Roger will show you that the quality of roads across the town has more than doubled within the last 8 years. His plan originally was a 20-plus year plan, and we think we're going to get to it significantly before that.
Well, I take a certain small pride in the fact that when I served on the planning board, the specifications that we imposed on roadways that were going to be offered for public acceptance was that, in our mind, they had to last 50 years. And as part of that, we typically would require sidewalks to be installed by the developer because of their cost. And recently that's become an issue, and I thought it would be helpful if we shared with the listening public, the process that we go through when we assess requests from neighborhoods with respect to the installation of sidewalks.
Sure. Sidewalks, we haven't had a lot of requests for sidewalks for many years, but within the last, I'd say, 6 months, we've had a number of neighborhoods ask us about sidewalks. Our general practice has been to refer them to the traffic committee first. We want to verify whether or not the issue is a public safety issue and start at that level. After we've cleared the issue of public safety, then we have to look at funding and agreement within the neighborhood for that activity. I don't believe the town has paid to put a sidewalk in since I've worked here, which is probably, it's 21 years now. And I would say that that's likely for most communities. Just knowing how municipal government is financed, property taxes, state revenue, and some local revenues, and knowing the burdens of a school system, a police and a fire system, your pension and your fixed income, your fixed debt obligations, there's not a lot of room. And if we can't keep up with the highway work, you know through the budget process that the highway department, engineering department has asked for $300,000 of funding the last 2 years, and we haven't added it to them because we have to make a choice between a teacher, a policeman, or a fireman, and more highway money.
Sure.
And we've chosen the personal service side. And so if we can't get to the roads, the sidewalks are going to be even more of a challenge to get to. However, if it becomes a public safety issue, then I think as a community we got to start to grapple with how we're going to do that. One of the ways communities do sidewalks is through a betterment program where neighborhoods decide they want a sidewalk. They don't think it's cost effective, and it is not, to do one just in front of their house. So all of the neighbors on a street will get together and agree and ask the town to put a sidewalk in, and we have a legal structure where we can bill them back over time, even if they don't want to do it all at once. And I think that's probably how you're going to see sidewalks in the future in Massachusetts until Proposition 2.5 changes and the financing of municipal government shifts.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to wrap up. This is my first one doing this, so I'm trying to stay on focus and schedule. I came from the town hall a short while ago where we swore in 3 new officers to serve in officer positions. That would be Lieutenant Richard Cochran. He's promoted from sergeant. He was a prosecutor for the department. It's my understanding he's going to be going to the midnight to 8 shift. Sergeant Dave Petiti was promoted to lieutenant, and Detective Bob Mansfield was promoted to sergeant. These are provisional or temporary appointments pending the results of an exam administered by civil service. We should hear the results in the early part of March of next year. But I'd like to extend my congratulations and best wishes to those men and to the department in general. There was a good show there today. The family was there, and I felt good being a part of that. So I think the department is in good hands, and this is just further reinforcement of it. Ted, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
HCAM, this has been a pleasure. It's a little warm in here, I won't lie, but I think this is good, and we'll look forward to doing this again soon. Thanks very much.